President Sarkozy gets up from the conference table, marches out and slams the door. He leaves the Excel Centre and the summit collapses. Fantasy? This is exactly what President Sarkozy has threatened to do if the G20 summit does not make a concrete commitment to reform the world's financial system. And it was reiterated today by his finance minister on the BBC's Hard Talk programme.
President Sarkozy was very clear on that front. He said if the deliverables are not there, I won't sign the communique.
However big
means walking away.
However big a diplomatic incident.
I think he's very determined.
This was the row that greeted the US president as he flew into London tonight. He maintained a diplomatic silence, but the head of the World Bank joined in.
I think that the overall outcome of this, I hope, will be one where people emphasize cooperation. And so people are going to come in with various statements about positions. They want to be recognized. They partly have to speak to their own domestic constituencies because these are elected politicians. My main request is that President Sarkozy and others not only be concerned about regulatory systems, but be concerned about the poor. And so I hope that he will walk out if we don't have support for the developing countries.
What the Europeans want at the London summit is the re-regulation of the banking system. Germany has taken the lead. Its Social Democratic Finance Minister, Peer Steinbrück, has engaged in a war of words with Switzerland over tax evasion and become the scourge of hedge funds. Why do Germany and France seem obsessed with raising the re-regulation issue above the immediate issue of anti-crisis measures? Well, two reasons. One, they think the European economic model was able to contain the banking crisis and will now cope with the recession. Two, they'd dearly like to kill off the Anglo-Saxon model of capitalism, and now is the best opportunity they'll ever have. The Europeans have pushed above all to make offshore and off-balance sheet finance impossible. They want regulation extended to all products, all markets and all participants.
To some extent, Europe can't wait for a global system. Because Europe is a lot of small pools of capital, Europe has to solve this within Europe, regardless of what happens in the rest of the world. So Europe is moving fast towards what is basically a single European regulator, because it has to. It doesn't have the choice. The problem at the G20 level is potentially that they do have the choice. And because they have the choice, they may not make progress as fast as they need to.
And this is the other thing driving the European stance. When American voters get angry, they tend to hit the talk radio shows. With Europeans, it's the streets. Today, these caterpillar workers in France decided to hold their manager hostage. Europe may not have the most fragile economy in the world, but history has taught its politicians to fear political fragility. With the world still struggling to work out how to judge the G20 summit, one way of judging failure is now clear. If you hear the words, President Sarkozy has left the building.
Well, earlier I spoke to the German finance minister, Peer Steinbrück. He's a key player, also opposed to another fiscal stimulus. I began by asking him if the Germans would follow the French out the door if they don't get what they want.
I think that is not very probable that somebody is walking out of the G20 meeting, because in my eyes there's a high probability that we will succeed to implement better regulation and a better supervision in order, well, to make further achievements to overwhelm this financial turmoil. I see very good chances, in particular because we made already some progress in Washington a couple of months ago.
What is it that Germany has to get out of this meeting?
Well, I think the most important principle is no blind spot, which means that all market participants, all financial products, all financial markets should be supervised and should be regulated.
So you would resist, would you, any attempt to get governments to spend more money to create jobs?
Yes, that's a critical question. Well, the government and the politics are not. We are no better managers or entrepreneurs, but a lot of bank managers, well, they failed. Obviously, have a look to all these excesses and speculations, and I think now it is the responsibility of politics, in particular of supranational or international institutions, to regain and to restore confidence on the financial markets. This is a very significant or important precondition to come out of this economic recession.
You've talked about this crisis being the creation of Anglo-Saxon capitalism. When you heard the Brazilian president last week talking about it being the work of white men with blue eyes, what did you think?
I'm not responsible for the quotations of other heads of state and government. Well, what I mean is that, well, looking back for the last 10 till 15 years, I think the financial markets in London, the City of London and Wall Street were, well, the leading markets all over the world, and they defined how to move. And when you look back to some mistakes we made in my eyes since the beginning of this decade, there are 2 points. We provided the market with very high liquidity as a result of 9/11, 2001, and a lot of people, in particular the Anglo-Saxons, were very much in favor of deregulation. And I think this deregulation and very cheap money is responsible for what we are facing now concerning these financial crises.
But you do see there's some possible agreement with the Anglo-Saxon model.
Yes, I think free markets are very important, but free markets need regulations. They need traffic rule, or however you will name it, to work and to contribute to an economic and social stability of our countries and worldwide.
Talking specifically about Britain, do you see any evidence that the measures taken by the government here are working?
That's the real provoking question, Mr. Paxman. Well, it is not my job to give any suggestion or recommendations to foreign and befriended governments. When I ever made an interview, I tried to explain what I deny or reject for Germany. And for example, for Germany, I'm very much reluctant or hesitating that credit finance programs can really prevent this recession. I think we must be very much aware what does it mean for our public debt and as burdens for upcoming generations, for the generation of my children and my grandchildren. So there are some achievements, some measures. Some countries choose a toolbox I would not choose in the case of Germany.